When I opened my eyes, the first thing I saw was white. Bleached walls. Sterile ceiling tiles. A buzzing fluorescent light. My throat felt like sandpaper, and there was a metallic taste in my mouth. I blinked, slow and heavy, like the weight of waking up had tripled. There were no flowers. No balloons. No family. Just a sharp antiseptic smell that clung to the air. The door creaked open. A nurse stepped in, tall, gray scrubs, no smile. Her eyes skimmed a tablet. "You're lucky to be alive," she said flatly, then turned to adjust a machine. Lucky. Right. I shifted slightly, pain stabbing through my ribs. I couldn't remember the exact moment, only the screech of tires, a flash of light, and a sound like the world splitting in half. Have you ever woken up not sure if you were saved or set up? I whispered to the ceiling. Would you believe it was just an accident? If everyone acted like you deserved it? Because that's what this felt like, punishment. But for what? No visitors. No voicemails. No missed calls. Just silence. And then it hit me. The last thing I did before the crash, I left a lawyer's office. The room in the law firm was cold, clinical, no family photos, no warmth in the decor. Just polished floors and tension. Your Aunt Lorraine passed last Tuesday, the lawyer had said. She left her estate solely to you. $13.4 million. Confidentially. I sat frozen, the pen shaking in my hand. Aunt Lorraine, the one relative who'd ever seen me. Truly seen me. The documents were signed. Sealed. I left stunned, driving on autopilot, trying to process what had just happened. I remember dialing Cameron's number. He didn't answer. Then the crash. She gave me her trust. They tried to take my life in return. It was too clean. Too convenient. I inherited $13 million and hours later, I was nearly dead. The nurse returned that afternoon. I asked about the accident. She avoided eye contact. You were found unconscious. No one else was on the scene. No traffic cams in that area. Just you. What about my car? I asked. She hesitated. Already towed. A private company picked it up before the police got there. That didn't sit right. My phone? I asked. She handed it over, screen cracked, battery drained. I charged it slowly and scrolled through the call log. The last calls were gone. Wiped. If this wasn't just bad luck, who had that much access to me? I whispered. And you, have you ever felt like someone wanted you gone, but smiled to your face every day? Because suddenly, I couldn't stop thinking about Cameron. He called that evening. Video call. I stared at the screen. His face was pinched, impatient. I'm in a meeting, he said. What's going on? I was in a car accident, I said, voice hoarse. I'm in the hospital. He glanced away, probably at a second screen. Yeah, I saw the missed call earlier. I'll swing by when I can. You'll be fine. Then he hung up. No, are you okay? No, what do you need? No emotion. Before the crash, I'd left him a voicemail. My voice trembling. Telling him I felt like I was being followed. That something was wrong. Now? He didn't sound relieved. He sounded interrupted. Later that night, the same nurse came in again. Said she needed another blood draw, though she had already done one earlier. I asked why. She didn't answer. She just drew the vial, labeled it quickly, and left. I stared at the ceiling for a long time after that. They didn't expect me to wake up, I whispered. At midnight, I pretended to sleep when the shift changed. When the room was dark and quiet, I reached for the chart clipped at the end of my bed. Medical terms I barely understood, and then I saw it. Cameron's name, listed as the decision-maker on my file. But he wasn't legally my husband anymore. That had ended months ago in a quiet courthouse, filed under irreconcilable differences. He'd begged me to keep it quiet. Said we could figure things out. That it was just a formality. So how the hell did he authorize anything? I flipped deeper into the chart. There it was, a form titled DNR. Do not resuscitate. It wasn't signed. But someone had tried to file it. My fingers went cold. I wasn't supposed to survive. And now that I have, I need to know who wanted me dead. The letter came on a Thursday. Thick paper. No return address. Just my name in bold black letters across the front, Alara Monroe. I ran my thumb along the seal before tearing it open. The words inside made my hands go cold. Lorraine Monroe, my aunt, had passed. And I, her estranged niece, the one she hadn't spoken to in over a decade, was the sole beneficiary of her estate. Estimated value, $13 million. I sat in silence. No tears. No joy. Just disbelief. Aunt Lorraine had always been the black sheep, smart, wealthy, brutally honest, and uninterested in family drama. She disappeared from our lives after a falling out with my mother, and no one ever explained why. I hadn't seen her since I was 19. And now, her will had found me. Jordan Hale, the estate attorney, explained everything. She left it all to you, Alara. Her assets, her real estate holdings, and most importantly, the trust. You're the only listed heir. I blinked. But why? Jordan offered a small smile. Maybe she saw something in you. Or maybe she just wanted the truth to land in the hands of someone who hadn't sold their soul. I didn't tell anyone at first. Not Cameron, my husband. Not Vivian, my mother-in-law. Especially not Tessa, my sister-in-law, who made it her full-time job to monitor every move I made since the wedding. The money, it didn't feel real. And part of me didn't want it to be. I'd spent years building a quiet life, keeping my head down in a family full of loud ambition and sharp smiles. But something about Aunt Lorraine's final move, it felt like a message. A signal flare in the dark. Still, secrets this big don't stay hidden for long. It started with subtle shifts. Cameron came home early, his eyes lingering too long on the unopened mail pile. Vivian suddenly invited me to brunch. Twice. And Tessa? She sent me a cheerful just checking in text with 3 smiley emojis. I knew better. They weren't checking in. They were circling. The night before I planned to officially claim the trust, I confronted Cameron. We need to talk, I said, holding the letter in my hand like a shield. He looked up from his phone. About what? This. I dropped the will on the table. His face changed fast. Where did you get this? She left it to me. All of it. He didn't speak. Didn't move. Just stared like he was calculating how fast this would blow up everything. And then, like a switch had flipped, he smiled. Too wide. Too practiced. Ilara, we're married. What's yours is mine, right? That night, I didn't sleep. I locked the door. I made a second copy of the documents. I emailed Jordan, requesting the transfer be delayed. And I started packing a bag. Because something in my gut screamed louder than reason, they weren't going to let me walk away with that money. The inheritance wasn't just a gift. It was gasoline. And I had just become the match. The hospital air was stale. Sanitized. Silent. But inside me, there was nothing quiet. I had spent the past few days replaying every moment, every shadowed face in that courtroom, every whisper behind closed doors. They thought I wouldn't remember. That I wouldn't come back from the crash. But I did. And now I needed someone to believe me. Jordan Hale walked beside me through the long corridor. He wasn't family. But right now, he was all I had. My lawyer. My only shield. My only sword. I'm not just filing a motion, he said, voice low, determined. We're going to give them a reason to regret every move they've made since you went under. I nodded. My ribs still ached, and my right hand trembled slightly as I clutched the folder Brenda had compiled. But my voice? It was steady. And that's what mattered. Inside the courtroom, all eyes turned when I entered. Vivian Voss smirked like I was an amusing interruption. Tessa didn't even bother to hide her disdain. And Cameron? He just raised one brow, calculating like he always did. The judge glanced down at the documents, frowning. We've reviewed the petition for mental incompetence filed against Ms. Monroe, he said, his voice cold. However, new evidence has been submitted this morning. That was Jordan's cue. He stood. Your Honor, we have audio and visual documentation proving that this entire petition was part of a long-planned scheme. My client has been lucid, stable, and above all, targeted. The prosecution objected. Tessa stood, practically hissing, this is irrelevant and inflammatory. But the judge held up a hand. Overruled. Let's hear it. Jordan pressed play. And the room changed. Marcus's voice filled the space, cocky, laughing, unaware he was being recorded. We get her ruled incompetent, we walk away with everything. Trust me, Viv's already paid the psychiatrist. It's all set. Silence. Then gasps. The judge's face hardened. Cameron turned pale. Vivian's hand gripped the table until her knuckles turned white. And Tessa? She looked like she might faint. I didn't blink. I didn't flinch. I let the silence choke them like it had choked me for weeks. That recording, Jordan continued, was retrieved from a backup server belonging to the private investigator assigned to my client's case. It was time-stamped, authenticated, and corroborated with a wire transfer from Vivian Voss's personal account to Dr. Rainsford, the very psychiatrist set to testify today. The judge turned to the defense team, his voice like thunder. Do you have any explanation for this? None came. And that's when I stood. I may have been broken, I said, my voice steady, loud, shaking but sharp. But I wasn't blind. I know what they tried to do. They left me in that hospital. They never visited. They wrote me off as gone, just so they could feast on what I'd inherited. But I lived. And I remember. I turned toward Vivian. You said I was weak. To Tessa. You thought I was naive. To Cameron. You assumed I'd stay silent. My voice rose just slightly, enough to reach the gallery. But here I am. The judge slammed his gavel. All motions to assume control of Ms. Monroe's estate are denied. In fact, based on this evidence, we will be opening a criminal investigation into conspiracy and attempted fraud. Vivian slumped in her seat. Cameron cursed under his breath. Tessa clutched her handbag like it might protect her from the coming storm. As I walked out of the courtroom, Jordan whispered, "They never saw it coming." I nodded. Because they didn't. They never expected me to rise. But I did. And I wasn't done. Pain. That was the first thing I remembered. Then light, sharp, sterile, unforgiving. And the voice. Steady. Professional. Ms. Monroe? Can you hear me? I blinked slowly, piecing together the puzzle of tubes and monitors around me. My throat felt like sandpaper. My ribs cracked. My legs immobile. But I was alive. Barely. Car accident, the nurse explained. You've been unconscious for 3 days. You're safe now. Safe. The word stung. Because I remembered the crash. I remembered the headlights. I remembered the sound of my own scream as the car flipped, the metal twisting like taffy. What I didn't remember was hitting the brakes. Something didn't feel right. And when I asked if anyone had come to visit me, the nurse hesitated. Your husband hasn't been by. Nor your family. But a detective did. Detective Mason Reed. Quiet, kind eyes. A calmness that said he'd seen everything. There's evidence the crash might not have been an accident, he told me. We're still investigating. I asked for my phone. It was gone. Stolen at the scene, he said. I asked for Jordan Hale. Already outside, the nurse said. He hasn't left. When Jordan walked in, he didn't speak right away. Just pulled a chair close and looked at me like I was a glass sculpture someone had tried to smash. They filed for conservatorship, he said softly. I stared at him. What? Vivian and Cameron. While you were unconscious. They told the court you were unstable. That the inheritance triggered a psychological break. They want control over the trust. My heart dropped. But the documents. I filed a freeze. They can't touch it without your signature. But Alara, there's more. He reached into his bag and pulled out a recording device. You need to hear something. It was a recording, Jordan's private meeting with Tessa, secretly captured when she thought she could manipulate him into backing the conservatorship claim. Her voice, clear, smug, venomous. She was never supposed to survive. We told Marcus to stall the ambulance. Just enough to trigger permanent brain damage. She was already fragile. Always was. The room spun. She doesn't deserve that money. It belongs to us. You think she'll know what to do with 13 million? She'll give it away to some animal shelter and call it justice. I couldn't breathe. She's just a sad little charity worker playing at being a Monroe. We did what had to be done. Jordan clicked the recorder off. For a long time, I didn't speak. Then I asked the only question that mattered. Can we take them down? Jordan nodded. If you're ready to fight. I was. The envelope was gold, too gold. Not elegant, not tasteful, but loud in that way only old Southern money could be. My name was calligraphed on the front in looping black ink, sealed with the Voss family crest. Inside, an invitation, a private family dinner, reconciliation and healing. Jordan Hale leaned back in my living room chair, tossing the invitation onto the coffee table like it was toxic. They never invite unless they intend to corner. You know that. I nodded, my fingers brushing the edge of the envelope. I'm not going to reconcile, I said. I'm going to end it. He said nothing for a beat, then, you can't burn a bridge if you bring the flood with you. Exactly. Would you walk back into the lion's den if it meant taking back your voice? I chose to walk in smiling. The Voss family mansion in Buckhead was its usual theater of grandeur, polished marble, chandeliers glittering like false promises, and the distinct chill of old secrets buried beneath Persian rugs. They had dressed the table like a magazine spread, gold-rimmed china, flickering candles, and enough wine to drown a small truth. Vivian Voss greeted me at the door with a kiss that didn't touch her cheeks. Elara, darling. It's time we move on. Cameron was already seated, raising a crystal flute in toast. To family unity. His smile never reached his eyes. I caught the flicker in his cufflink, camera lens. Recording. Tessa Vosbrooks poured me a glass of wine, heavy on the Pinot, light on the sincerity. We're glad you came, she said, sliding a leather folder toward me. Just a formality. I opened it. Reconciliation agreement, it read. But the fine print? Asset transfers. To them. I smiled, slow. You think I came here to sign? I reached into my purse and laid down a folder of my own. I brought the truth. Tension cracked the surface like ice over deep water. The truth will set you free, I said, but first it will make you miserable. They didn't blink. Have you ever smiled at people planning your downfall? Jordan burst through the door right on cue, trench coat dusted with raindrops. Sorry, I'm late. Traffic was murder. He placed 3 thick files onto the table, looked directly at Vivian, then to Cameron, and finally Tessa. You've all been served. The air shifted. Twist. The court injunction halted all asset transfers under the Voss family trust. Every check, every document, frozen. Vivian's wine glass dropped, shattering across the floor like the illusion of control. Cameron paled. You can't do this. Jordan smiled. Actually, the judge says I can. Tessa clutched her phone. She's unstable, she shouted. I have a recording, her losing it in the hospital. Elara looked at her calmly. That's funny. So do I. She tapped her phone. The audio played, clear and cutting, Vivian's voice in the hospital room, saying, if she wakes up, we'll finish it another way. Silence. Just the thunder outside. When the tables finally turn, would you strike, or would you walk away? Vivian cracked first. You destroyed this family. No, I said, voice steady. I revealed it. Police lights flickered through stained glass windows, coloring the pristine dining room in red and blue. Officers entered quietly, like the end of a play. The cuffs clicked like punctuation marks. Cameron hissed, You think this makes you safe? No, I whispered back. It makes me free. Sometimes justice doesn't roar, it whispers, I'm done. Revenge is never about hate, I told them. It's about reclaiming what was taken. One by one, they were let out. Vivian screaming. Tessa sobbing. Cameron silent. As the door closed behind the last of them, a detective stepped forward. Tall, dark suit, badge glinting. There's one more file you need to see, he said, handing me a sealed envelope. It was marked, Lorraine Monroe, confidential. I stood alone in a room that once called itself family. I thought I'd reached the end. But the truth was only beginning. The courtroom felt colder than it should have. No matter the humidity of downtown Atlanta outside, the marble walls inside Fulton County Court turned warmth into silence. I walked in flanked by Jordan Hale and Detective Mason Reed, every heel click on the polished floor reminding me, this was not fear. This was the sound of reclaiming my life. Vivian Voss sat near the front, dressed in gray silk that hung loose on her shoulders, her eyes darting like she'd already lost. Ryan Brooks adjusted his tie, all smug civility, while Cameron leaned back as if the verdict were just a formality. The judge called the session into order. Then came the last attempt, the Hail Mary. Your Honor, Ryan announced, we request a motion to question Ms. Monroe's mental stability during the recent family dispute. There are signs, instability, delusions. Jordan stood. Objection. Irrelevant and defamatory. The judge didn't blink. Motion denied. And furthermore, she lifted a document. This court finds the previous power of attorney executed during Ms. Monroe's coma to be invalid. All transactions conducted under it are hereby voided. Gasps. Vivian slumped. Literally. Her body went slack in the chair, then fell sideways to the floor. The courtroom froze. Paramedics were called. Cameron tried to rise, but the bailiff held him firmly by the shoulder. My breath didn't tremble. It deepened. Just once. Justice is not blind. She's just been waiting for her turn. Have you ever had to prove you were sane just to reclaim your life? Now imagine doing it while the people who buried your truth watched you rise. Later that week, the story broke in headlines, Voss heiress unseated. Tessa Voss Brooks, cornered by evidence, couldn't spin her way out this time. Jordan's team had uncovered a chain of emails between her and Ryan, detailing a campaign to paint me as unstable, leaks, gossip, planted stories. Her company's board wasted no time. Suspension. No vote needed. Her apology landed like glass on concrete, shattered and late. Ryan didn't take it well. Surveillance footage from a courthouse hallway showed him slipping cash to a clerk. It didn't go unnoticed. He was arrested that afternoon. I stood in the press shadow of their downfall, not speaking to the cameras. But inside? They thought I was too quiet to win. They mistook silence for surrender. Would you still want success if it came from someone else's fall? I didn't want their ruin. I wanted my freedom. The next day, I drove to a private assisted care facility north of the city. The walls smelled like lemon wax and the end of conversations. Vivian was already in the lounge, thin, small in a way she never allowed herself to be before. I sat across from her. Said nothing. Just placed a folder on the table, my legal independence finalized, a copy of the court ruling that severed any remaining ties. She looked up. I didn't. She once asked if I'd ever be enough. I finally stopped asking her back. Forgiveness is giving up all hope for a better past. If silence spoke louder than words, what would yours say? Outside the courtroom, a woman waited. Blonde, early 40s. Familiar. Ilara? I paused. We went to high school together, she said, stepping forward. You were always so quiet. We thought you were soft. She smiled, not unkindly. Turns out, you were just sharpening. That one stuck. Jordan handed me the last envelope, final court documents confirming my full estate control, my name restored, and most importantly, guardianship over Caleb. I traced my fingers over the embossed seal. This wasn't a war, I whispered. It was reclamation. Have you ever been underestimated for so long, you almost believed them? That stops today. I stood on the courthouse steps alone, the Atlanta skyline behind me, the sunlight finally filtering through a sky too long gray. I didn't fight to win, I whispered. I fought so they'd never silence me again. I turned, heels clicking on the stone, leaving behind the echo of every battle. Then, footsteps. Ma'am. A courier approached, slightly breathless, envelope extended. I took it. On the front, bold letters, estate dispute, Lorraine Monroe, addendum found. My fingers tightened. When the past knocks again, would you open the door?